Signed up for the 43rd Parliament. It's run its full term, and I'm just not recontesting for the next time round. So this is the moment to make those sort of announcements, and as it goes into election season, and we've made this Parliament. Supply and confidence has fully been delivered. I've been in federal Parliament 5 years, 17 years in public life, 6 elections, with a very young family. You only get one crack at. The time's right for me.
Is it also an acknowledgement that, the writing's on the wall, you were going to get voted out? The voters in line have never really come back to you after you seem to anger a lot of them by supporting Labor?
Well, prove it.
What do you think?
The CFMEU was running around on this 457 visa only last week with polling that they were trying to influence my vote on. They also did polling of the electorate, and that statement is incorrect, that it was a very close contest. In the end, the ballot box in a decision in political life in many ways looks after itself. A decision about my future is nothing about a fear of losing. That would actually be an easy decision to bowl up and frankly get financial gain from that sort of decision. It's a respect of winning and whether you're really willing to commit to yourself to another 3 years, 100% as a Member of Parliament, drive to all the functions, come to Canberra away from family, and being honest with myself, no, I'm not willing at this stage in my life and with my family to do that.
Because already on Twitter, some people have branded you gutless. They said the voters want a chance to vote you out. I mean, you expect this kind of reaction?
Oh, sure. That has been life, not only in this Parliament, but I think it's something culturally that the public square needs to deal with. That, you are asking me questions based on anonymous Twitter accounts, and I think the public square has been invaded by the fringe, and we culturally need to deal with that as a country, but that's for others to try and work out. I tried to do it and lift the level and lift the bar and lift the respect. If I haven't been able to achieve that, then I apologise, but I did my best.
Well, the thanks you've got for that task is a lot of people branding the hung Parliament a failure, and implied in that, I think, is that the crossbench has been a failed experiment that people don't want to try again, and certainly there's no standout independent candidate in your seat of line, I don't think. Does that disappoint you, and do you think having this hung Parliament and the way it's worked and all the elements that have been a part of it, it's not all about the independents, a lot of it about the dynamics within each party and between the major parties themselves, is that the prospect or the future likelihood of voters going for independence has been set back?
Oh, look, I don't believe in polling, but if we're going to play this game of polling, independents are at record highs. So no, there hasn't been another independent put their hand up in the seat of line, but this thing called an independent brand is a little bit questionable. I'm someone who believes in the original concept of democracy, where you stand, you get elected, and community gets behind you, and you work together to do the best you can. So, the community now has some really important decisions to make in the electorate of line over the next 8 to 12 weeks. That is their choice. As far as your comments about this Parliament, we can all buy into some lazy rhetoric, or we can look at the facts. And the facts are supply has been delivered over the last 3 years. Both major parties have backed the budget. Confidence has been delivered. There has been no confidence motion in either the Prime Minister or the government over these 3 years. There has been a very large amount of legislation, 580 bills that have 87% bipartisan support. There's been a high number of withdrawals of government legislation, amendments to government legislation. There's been record private members' motions and bills, over 300, 100 of them supported, record committee work. So, we can play the game of two sides, two tribes going to war to prove a point. Or when you look at the details, there's been actually a lot of bipartisanship in this Parliament and a lot of success.
That process you just described there is all about the impact that having more parties at play in the Parliament, we have in a hung Parliament, having effect on the legislation we end up with. Out of all that legislation, and you've always said it's all about the policy for you and how you voted. After all the votes, after all the input and the impact you've been able to have because of your position as an independent in a hung Parliament on policy, what's your major achievement? What policy are you proudest of the role you've played?
locally, we've turned education on the ground around from being a region of a laggard to one of a leader. There's been about $160 million go in, and also a lot of program delivery in the education area, particularly in tertiary education. We had very low uptakes in our region. Now we're starting to get rolling. Through this parliament, I think there's been some big reforms of significance. Actually doing the emissions trading scheme, actually doing equity in education, tertiary and secondary, actually doing or starting to do recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in the Constitution. And, these are all the issues that I talked about in that 17-minute riff. They've actually been delivered. And, you can throw in lifting the tax-free threshold, you can throw in the National Disability Insurance Scheme. This has done a lot of reform work, and reform work that majority parliaments past had tried to do and failed to do.
Talking about education there, one of the big things still undone and still to be done in these final couple of days of this 43rd Parliament is getting the Gonski bill finalised and voted through the Senate. Are you worried that might all come undone if Labor changes leaders today or tomorrow?
Well, I think we're about 4 hours away from that happening, and that is a significant reform for regional Australians, for Aboriginal students and for families of lower socioeconomic income. I think it's been a disgraceful debate that we're even having a debate, that we somehow seem to accept education data that has a 30% gap in those three categories, and the funding formula itself has been fingered as the problem, and yet we're arguing about it. So it will pass, hopefully, in about 4 hours, and it'll be a significant moment for Australia, because what that then means is nationally, Catholic education across the country has a new funding formula. It means independent schools across the country have a new funding formula. And it then means that state schools in just under half the states also have a new funding formula. The question for the state premiers who haven't signed up is why they're damaging their own assets when 2/3 of their education system are locked in, and why are they playing the politics ahead of getting greater equity for students, which is at the heart of the Gonski reforms.
It's 11 minutes to 8 on breakfast. Our guest this morning is the independent member for Lyne, Rob Oakeshott, who's announced that he will not contest the next election. Rob Oakeshott, you stood in the Parliament this week and addressed the Governor-General. You said she can't assume that the independents would support a change of Labor leadership. It looks as though there will be a ballot for the leadership. What will you do if Labor changes leaders?
Yeah, just to correct that, it was about me, and I certainly wasn't assuming anything.
I beg your pardon, sorry.
on others.
You can't assume that the Governor-General can't assume that you would support a change of Labor leadership.
That's right. I was saying assume nothing. The critical question is, as a Commission Prime Minister, what is, if we're going to play this game, if there was a change of leadership, what would she write? What is the advice she would give? And to get rid of any grey area at all, the reason for making a late night speech on Monday night was to clarify I am not about personalities, I am not about political parties, I am all about the Parliament and the policy.
So what happens in the Parliament if Labor changes leaders?
Well, if any other rooster wants to, put a bid in, do it on the floor of the Parliament and do it shaped around a policy platform. And at this stage, Tony Abbott and Kevin Rudd, who apparently are the formal and informal challengers, have not put policy on the floor of the Parliament.
Okay, but
so
let's
there is only, in my mind, one candidate for the job.
If Labor changes leader, though, and this is something that may happen within the next 24 hours, it'll be important to know for the process going forward whether you, as one of the key independents, would back Labor still with a new leader or would withdraw your support and...
Fran, please listen to me. It is about policy on the floor of the Parliament. If Kevin Rudd or any other candidate wants to win my support either now or after some event, put your ideas on the floor of the Parliament. They are not there. And I've outlined what I'm looking for from my point of view, what excites me. I've worked with the Prime Minister, who is the Commission Prime Minister, respectfully and honourably on all those issues. If someone else thinks they can do better, put up.
Rob Oakeshott, thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast.
Okay, thank you.